I'm going to let Megs do the introductions for the panelists, and I'm going to do the introductions for Megs, but just a little one. So Megs has firsthand experience in agriculture as a former grain farmer and is personally familiar with the unique challenges of the industry. As the executive director of the Do More Agriculture Foundation, Megs is using her background and lived experience to continue the conversation, raise awareness for mental health and agriculture, create community, build and strengthen partnerships, and do more for those in agriculture, their families, and rural communities. So if I can call up Megs, Jimmy, and Wendy, and I'll leave it to you, Megs, to take it away. So please put your hands together in welcoming these lovely ladies to the stage.
Sorry, I'm the one that asked for a handheld mic. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. This is a very important conversation, and I'm really thrilled that
We might be too close.
Oh,
Do you want to pull your chair that way?
sorry, technical challenges.
He said if we're too close.
Should I shuffle my chair over? Help? I'm okay. Okay. Thank you, Heather, for that introduction. And I would like to introduce Jimmy and Wendy. I am going to actually hand it over to them to introduce themselves because they can do it much better than I can. So, Jimmy?
We'll see how this goes. I'm Jimmy Meyer, and what do we do here with these? There we go. Is it annoying to you all, or is it okay? Okay. So I'm from Abbotsford, BC, and with my husband, we own and operate U&D Meyer Dairy Number 2, as well as we have a hay ranch up in Barriere, BC, and that is Cold Creek Ranch. And we have 4 kids, and they're all pretty involved in the farm. I think they're all staying, so we have our own little commune there. And so I think that's about it. I'm not good at my own introductions.
My name is Wendy Bennett. I'm the Executive Director with AgSafe Agriculture Association in BC. And we are employer-funded health and safety association serving the needs of all of the agriculture employers, but also family farms in British Columbia for anything health and safety related, including mental health, physical health. We work a lot with labor, hence my question this morning about the global labor shortage. And wherever we can, stop and help with emergency response planning, and pretty much anything that producers say that they need to help with their workers and their farms and safety.
Thank you both. So we are going to start things off with a slideshow. This is really to take us back. It's been a year since the floods. For those of us that did not live through that experience, it may not be fresh in our minds. So we really want to help set the stage, take us back to what was going on. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that this might be a really challenging conversation for some. There are people possibly in the room that lived through this, and I want everyone to know that this is a safe place. I want everyone to know that they're welcome to share, as well as ask questions at any point throughout our discussion. But I also want you all to know that if at any time you need to leave, please do so. We will not take offense to that. What is most important is that you are taking care of what you need in your mental health. So thank you again for being here. We're going to kick things off by further setting the stage. Jimmy, can you start at the beginning? So when did you find out about what was going on, needing to be evacuated? What was that first 24 to 48 hours like for you?
Right. So as you saw on the map there, where we sit, we're just across the border on the north side, and then Sumas, Washington is on the border on the south side. So you've got Sumas, Washington, which is from Sumas Prairie, maybe 5 miles, but then it's also side by side. And then you also have Everson, Washington, which is another maybe 5 miles southeast. And Everson is where the Nooksack River is. So that was the issue. We've heard, we knew that there was a chance of the flooding to come. But like normal years, you think, oh, it could come, it might not come, and let's just see how it goes. So I have a friend who lives in Everson there, so they were going to let me know that when the water went over Main Street in Everson, at that point we know that it takes about 13 hours to come to Sumas. So this all started on November 14th of 2021, and November 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th is pretty good timeline for us, because now we've just had our 1 year since this has all happened, but it's all still very fresh. So word's going around, everybody's talking on Facebook. Some people were getting notices that they would need to evacuate because the water then on the 15th had crossed Sumas and was coming into Canada, which again, once it comes over, it hits, I feel like it hit in 3 phases. So it hits the first part of Abbotsford, and then after a few days, it hit the second part of Abbotsford, and another was the third part. And we're kind of in that second part. So it was a few hours, the entire day, and then into the night. And we received our notification, and I want to read it. I'm going to reference some of my stuff here because it's been a long time, and stuff that happened in the beginning is fresh, but then you forget because so much has happened over the last year. So we received a notification on Facebook, which startled a lot of us. The City of Abbotsford is issuing immediate and urgent notice to all residents that did not evacuate the Sumas Prairie earlier today to evacuate immediately. Conditions within the Sumas Prairie within the last hour have escalated and pose a significant risk to life. This event is anticipated to be catastrophic. Residents remaining and can't evacuate safely are requested to call 911 and report their location immediately. And what had happened is we have Barrowtown Pump Station, and they were saying that the pump station was failing and that the Fraser River could then flush into Sumas, and that's where the catastrophic comes into play. So that sent everybody into a bit of a tailspin. Then you decide, do you stay, do you go? And I think many farmers here, they understand, and yet many don't, that you stay with your animals if you can. A lot of farmers will put their animals first. And the take is that if every farmer left, there would have been, between chickens, pigs, cows, I don't even know how many, more than, we lost hundreds of thousands with chickens and pigs, and I think it was 400, I'm not sure, with cows, but it would have been horrible. It would have been way beyond that. So my husband said he was staying, and my mother-in-law had come to stay with us the night before. So it was decided that Tony would stay with our 2 boys, Joe and Ryan, and my daughter's boyfriend. And then I would leave with my mother-in-law, my 2 daughters, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, and our employees, which were 4 of them that night. So, that sent waves of emotions because, my daughter is very close to her brother, who's 17, she's 14, and she came into my room. She's been very stoic and very strong, and she says, "Mom, please don't let Ryan stay. He's only 17. And, that shows where it goes through the mind of a 14-year-old, that she's just seeing us worried and she doesn't normally see that. And so I talked her through it. It's going to be okay. So we waited for search and rescue to come. They finally came around 1:30 in the morning on I might have skipped a day, but on the 17th. And I had reached out to a few people and ended up going and staying with a good friend of ours who works for Richie Smith, and they took us in. So when search and rescue came, they were going to take us out, and on the edge of our property is Sumas River, and it's more of a creek, but they call it a river. And normally that river is down, so here's the road. It goes down to a slope with grass, and then there's a little road because it's a park, and then the river is there. So it's normally about a 20-foot drop. So when we were going out, I'm behind search and rescue, and then our employees were behind me. The road, or the water was flush with the road. I'd never seen that before. We see it rise from time to time, but never to that extent. So that was nerve-wracking because you don't know if where you're driving, is it going to wash away? Is the road going to crumble? Is water going to come through? It's foreign. So we went in, we stayed with our friends, and it was an interesting way out because they took us, we're right before the freeway or the highway, and they took us to the off-ramp, and at 1:30 in the morning, there's nobody else out there. All roads were closed. So they took us westbound in the eastbound lane, and we were avoiding tree trunks and boulders that I don't even know where these boulders came from because we're farm fields there. I don't, it's grass and dirt and not boulders. And then my brother-in-laws, we passed there. They're on the parallel road to the highway, and they had big round bales, and their big round bales were everywhere, just floated wherever they could go. So we're dodging, going westbound, and it was interesting. We went through some water, nothing that was terrible, but not one I'm used to. So then we go over the highway, and then we return eastbound in the westbound lane. And then that took us up over the mountain. So normally that trek would take you 6-7 minutes. It took us about 45 minutes to get from point A to point B. Then we went to stay with our friends. And they were very gracious, very kind. It was comfort to us because we know them so well. And yeah, I don't know if that point...
I just want to highlight too something Jimmy just said. She talked about, they made the decision to leave her husband, the sons, the boyfriend on farm to take care of the dairy cows. One of the things, I've had her story, she submitted it to me prior, but one of her comments in her story is that teenagers and youth were dealing with situations that even the strongest adults would struggle with. And so I just want to highlight that's really how things started and how things continued, especially with dealing with animals. And unfortunately, some of the animals that had to be culled through the process, and just how hard that is on those that care for those animals and on those producers, especially the teenagers and the youth that were involved in that process. Wendy, AgSafe BC and other provincial AgSafe groups, organizations, they're a wealth of information. I think oftentimes we don't always know how much information that you guys have. One of the things that you can help with is emergency preparedness plans. Can you speak to us the importance of having those plans? And then, I'm going to skip back, guys. We're going to go back to the beginning before we get into that. So initially, Jimmy's just really set the scene of that first 24, 48 hours. So at that time, where was AgSafe? What were you guys doing initially? What were you hearing? What were you seeing? What were you trying to do in that time to support producers and their families?
Thank you. And we'll get into detail with the emergency response plans after, and how crucial they are and what we can do. But initially, I had one member of my team who's former emergency response team with the RCMP, and he was pulled in to work with the Emergency Operations Center. Because if you've ever been involved in a major disaster, they set up an EOC, and then there's a lot of challenge with everybody wants to be in charge. And the road is the city, and so the mayor is in charge, but then it's Transport Canada, and so they want to be in charge, and then it's the Ministry of Highways, so they want to be in charge. And unfortunately, it can be very difficult for them to come to consensus as to what the best route to take as far as allowing people to go in or not allowing people to go in, or do we give them a timeline, or what do we do? So we were involved with the EOC essentially to help set up permitting systems so that you could allow people who were going in to care for animals or to help evacuate or any of those things with a system that they would be given a permit with an assigned time frame, and you knew how to contact them so that if the situation changed, you were able to get a hold of them so that they could get out safely at that point in time. So we were working with that. We also had lots. I had one of my team who was his first day, and he was supposed to be going out to visit a number of farms to help with some safety plans, but hey, the highway was gone, so that didn't work out because Highway 1 was completely shut down. It was underwater, and then there were a number of landslides. So it did impact more than just the prairie. Dairy farmers who had milk that had to be transported, there was no way for it to get anywhere. So the whole supply chain was impacted on that one. We were helping a lot with trying to source a lot of the different donations that were needed. One of my staff is a very avid fisher, and so she got her group to donate a bunch of waders because rubber boots weren't going to cut it. The water was too deep. They had quite a few. We put together a re-entry kind of packages for people going in safely because the water has come up and now you're going to be able to get back in. You don't know what kind of hazards you're going to be exposed to. It could be, there's asbestos, there's electrical, there's everything. And that's where I put a call out asking specifically for some filters for half-mask respirators and was contacted by SPI Safety, which is a national Canadian group. And she said, well, send me your list of what you need. And really, I just wanted some P100 filters, but she said, send me your list. And we received 17 skids of personal protective equipment over time. So it was everything people needed to go back in to try to start to rebuild. That's when we started to recognize and were told that there was a huge need for mental health support. And so that was my project at that point in time, was to reach out and see what we could do for that.
Yes. And did you find with, identifying it, but did you find that there was a hurdle at the beginning because everyone in that moment, you're trying to deal with what's going on. So your first response would be that fight, flight, or fright or freeze mode, right? So did you find that there was uptake or receptiveness for that mental health piece when everyone was just trying to get through kind of survival mode?
No.
We weren't there yet, right?
No,
I don't
yeah,
know if
we weren't there
what
yet.
they were feeling yet.
They were still responding, but little things like Jimmy and the ladies and it was the ladies that she worked with, were able to bring people together, and that was one of the biggest sources for mental health support. We did a session and brought in professional counselors and whatnot, and I was all excited, and the Dairy Association helped sponsor it, and we brought in food, and we had the mayor, and we had 2 members of parliament, and they were all there, and 7 people came because they weren't ready. It was too soon. So being able to judge.
How long after?
That was, when was that? That was, I think, the beginning of January.
Right.
So yeah, they weren't
we're
ready.
talking 2 months after,
Still 2
and they
months.
still weren't ready. Yeah. But how do you know?
And that's the thing, is we didn't know what was necessary. So we built a lot of packages and a lot of resources just to have them out there and kept just putting them in people's hands. So the biggest thing is you used to be able to get customized Tim Hortons cards. You can't anymore unless you want to pay a premium. But we gave anybody that wanted one at Tim Cards. It was $5, but you can get lunch, and there's nothing better than a warm cup of coffee or hot chocolate or whatever when you've been outside and dealing with the cold and the wind and the rain, because the rain didn't stop. The flooding started to go away, but the rain continued. And just being able to provide some resources and support. And we did, most of it was through Jimmy and the different events that she set up.
Yeah, just catching on that a little bit. We had a series of, I thought it was 4, but somebody else said it was 5, of 4 or 5 more atmospheric river, the word we don't like to say anymore, evacuation orders after that. And not even evacuation orders, but warnings or whatever. It's coming again, prepare again. It's coming again, prepare again. And this was all in a matter of a week, 3 days, 4 days. So each time we think we're over it and okay, are we going to be able to step ahead now? We weren't. So it was a long process that way. The rain just kept coming.
Yeah, and that's so hard on just your mental well-being, right? Because every single time you go back into that moment of when everything first started happening and you're almost re-traumatized every time you're seeing that warning come up. You shared that you were not flooded out, right? So once you were able to return home and join your family, what was the next step for you? Like is that when you switched over to support mode?
Not yet.
Okay.
So for me, we arrived at our friend's house. I'm not sure my dates now. I think on the 15th or 16th. Anyway, and the next day, I said I was just going to go into town. I left my daughter with them. She wanted to watch a movie. My mother-in-law had gone into Vancouver to stay with my sister-in-law there, and my girls had gone to Emma's place, which was my son's girlfriend at the time, and they stayed there with I forgot to say, our 4 cats and 2 Bernese mountain dogs that they evacuated out in the bed of my pickup truck that night. And they took them there. And then our foreign workers, as well as our 2 regular employees, had also found other places to go. So that day, I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to breathe. I wanted to see what happened. And so I drove up on Sumas Mountain because I knew I could overlook the prairie, and I was overlooking the prairie, and it was hard to see. I still get emotional. I didn't think I would. And it was hard to see. You know, you're seeing what is normally grass fields and Sumas River running through, and you know where the school is, you know where Castle Fun Park is, you know all these places, and they're now in brown colored water. I started to cry, and the rain started coming, and that's what kind of triggered that. I'm like, oh, here it comes again. And I let myself cry a little bit. And then after a bit, I said, no, that's enough. You know, we're okay. I knew we were okay. We were by Hogan Park there, but the water never went over. And fast forward in a minute, I think after a few days, we had a dike breach down the road from us. And I think that dike breach saved us, because had it not, it would have kept swelling there, and it would have dropped on our side, which was our fields and then our property there. So it didn't help the places that were by that breach. It was a smaller breach, but it didn't help. So at that point, I had a good talk with myself, and then I called my friend Hallie here, that we do everything together, so we work really well together. And I said, you know, we got to do something. They were in the same boat that we were. She felt that the breach helped them as well, because the water was coming into their yard, but then it stopped once that breach happened. So same as us, we had no buildings, homes with water. They had no buildings or homes with water. On that parallel roads where I said I went by my in-laws' place, my brother-in-law's, when the water was coming to their place, my husband was able to get over there. We got some of their young stock and brought it to our place. And so we had extra room in our barn to put some of their young stock in there. And we took care of them for a while. So at that point, I said to Hallie, I said, what do we do? You know, we've got to do something. And I was on my way home. So she said, let's talk once you get home. And they had gone out the same night we did, but they had been taken out by helicopter because they were had their elderly father there as well. So I went back, and I was still at the house for 2 more days, so my mind was going and going. What could I do? I'm ready to come home, and I used one of the permits that was available. And I was, you know, what can I do? So first off, I was going to the vet, getting supplies, taking it to some of the farmers that I could reach. Then I was just putting it on my own Facebook page. Who needs food? Who needs water? I can come across. What can I bring you? So I did very little at that point, but to me, it kept my mind busy and made me feel like I was doing something. So then day 3, I was able to come home. And before I came home, my husband said that they had been there on their own. We normally have 10 employees all together with family and our workers. And instead, it was just the 4 boys there. Well, husband and boys, but they had been working around the clock. They were exhausted. And we milk 2 times a day. So yes, they would start at 3, 4 in the morning, and normally we finish milking at 8, and we have a break. They go back out at 9 for chores and whatnot. But those breaks didn't come because they were doing double the work. One of the first families, as I said, in that first section that got flooded, they couldn't get back to their farm. So they had stayed in the prairie as well. So it was peace of mind for me as I was away, because they were bringing meals to my family. And they couldn't get to their place, so what could they do? They could bring meals. So as I talked to Tony, he said, well, we're soaked. We've been working around the hours. We don't even know what day it is. We don't know what time it is. We need new clothes. We had no water. They had shut off the water. He said, so if you could go to Mark's on your way home. I had, I think, 2 pair of coveralls, a couple of those flannel jackets that we all wear, and socks, and it was $700. And that was fine for us. We could do that, but that's what really got my mind going. And I thought, so many people can't do this. There was a man behind me. He had 6 or 8 pair of gumboots that he was buying for his employees so that they could try and trek through the best they could. And we all know barn boots aren't cheap. So again, I talked to the Marks lady there and I said, you know, if we were to put up a box here for donations of gift cards, would you let us do that? And whoever comes in, if they want to donate, I could, you know, take this and hand it out to the farmers. I know them. We're living there, so I know who's in need. And she was all on board, absolutely. And we went home. I told Hallie what I had done. And then within probably 5 days, we were set to go. We had started a Facebook page. We called it Helping Sumas Prairie Farmers, which started out for farmers because that was where my heart was at first, but then you quickly see that it was not just farmers that was needed. There were so many more. And so it then became, okay, who can we give to, or anybody else would take our boxes. So we went to Starbucks. There's a small area there with some businesses, so we kind of stayed in the same area. We went to Starbucks, we went to Birchwood, we went to Lowe's. Buckerfields took a box. They were great. They set up a graph and said they wanted to meet this amount. And so we would go back and forth every day. So Hallie and I switched days and we would go pick up cards, and we kind of saved those for a few weeks because we just didn't know where it would go. And, you know, going back home to my husband and family, I asked my husband today if I could say this because I don't know if it'll offend some people, if it would definitely not go well with AgSafe. But you desperate times calls for desperate measures, and with no water, the cows needed water. We have 900 head, and so he was using flood water to water our cows, and that's one of the things that I think hits me, because what does everybody say about flood water? Don't go in it, don't touch it, nothing, and he's feeding it to our animals. And it was, don't feed them or water them and they die, or you water them this and they die and hopefully they live. I'm happy to say we did not lose a cow, we did not lose a heifer, we did not lose a calf. So it worked out in our favor, but you never know. I'm looking at my notes again, we had 3 or 4 days with no water. We had to dump our milk, so we were dumping our milk for about 10 days. Some were much longer than that. The first phase of Sumas Prairie that was hit, they had water come in fast and hard, but then it receded quickly. So my brother-in-laws, it came in, they were completely submerged. There's pictures, I don't know, if it's come up yet, where you see it from the air and you just see the rooftops. But the very next day, because most farmers couldn't get back to their places, they all formed together and they cleaned it out, they brought sawdust in, they brought feed in, they brought water in, because that was one of the closest places that you could get to, and they were milking the next night, so that was a miracle. The middle section was hit after them, and then they were on for a few days, and that's more, what was really hit was a community of Arnold, and I never looked at a tragedy before. You look at a town and you think, oh, Abbotsford was hit by this catastrophic flood or fires, or even, shortly after ours was a tornado in the States. And I looked at that tornado differently, because for us, it was my brother-in-laws, my mother-in-law, my neighbors, my friends, the people I didn't know, the blueberry farmers. And then in Arnold, it was just family. So you've got this family, all side by side, both sides of the road, completely hit. So when I saw that tornado, I saw it as individuals now. I didn't see it as a city or town anymore. I didn't see it as one, because now I rationalize that's not just one, it's not just a city. There's people, each of their own. So yeah, that's where we were there. And then the east side of Sumas Prairie, they were underwater for a full 3 weeks. The water went there and just stayed there. It had nowhere to go. So they were even harsher than what we all were. So, long story, I'm sorry, I get there rattling on. But with the fundraising. We started up that Facebook page, and we had it up and going within about 5 days. I'm gonna look here, we started just talking about what we wanted to do. I started just saying, you know, we're here, we're gonna see what we can do, we're collecting gift cards, we're collecting donations. We received a call from Quebec, from Kamek Boots, and they wanted to send 300 pair of boots. And I got a little excited about that. So they said, get everybody's sizes. So I tried to muster up reaching everybody that I could. If you need a pair of boots, if your workers need a pair of boots, let me know your name, give me your sizes. So we're in the process of that. That took about 3 weeks to come in. In the meantime, Watson Gloves from Coquitlam in Vancouver had called, and they wanted to donate some gloves, work gloves. And within a day, they had sent me well over 1,000 gloves shipped to my garage. And so I called Hallie and I said, let's go. And so here we've had the flood. Now the cold weather has set in, and now we've had freezing rain. So they're in the process of cleaning mud and debris out, but then now all the mud and debris is frozen. They have pipes that are bursting. It's becoming a bigger mess. So we put the gloves in our truck, and we just started going from place to place to place. Some places nobody could return, so we didn't see anybody there. But we just went out and we pull in, do you need gloves? Do you need gloves? And it was nice to see, because suddenly you could see that you were a little bit of a breath of fresh air, because they're scrubbing, they're cleaning, they're trying to get this water out. And you don't know what to do with everything. One family told me afterwards, we had showed up there, and they said, when you guys showed up, that was a sign for us. The people knew we were not okay. He said, we were there, but we were so in our own world, we had no idea if anybody knew what we were going through. And so we just continued that. At that point, things started coming in. We got a call from a church in Chilliwack. They wanted to donate $10,000 to buy these type of things that you're seeing here. The flannels, there was rain gear, there was socks, there were so much I couldn't even say. Can't remember it all. We had blankets donated. Then I got a call from Abbotsford Bin Company, and I didn't know them. I've not had a bin in a while, but they had been bringing bins to people that had ordered them. And the man said, my dad and I would like to meet you. Can you meet us up at Tim Hortons? I said, sure. So I went up, and they as well wanted to give Hallie and I $10,000 to give to whoever we wanted, however we wanted. So we chose 10 families to give $1,000 each to. And going back, like, we're nobody in our town. Like, we know the neighbors, we know the family, but I'm not in charge of groups. I was the 4-H leader for a few years, and that's about the extent of it with my husband. But, you know, we're known, but these people don't know me. And I think because we were just two farm wives, we're putting it out there that we're here, we went through it, and we're going to go directly and hand it to the people that we see as need it. And all I had to give them was my word. And it was really great because they took it. They accepted my word. And so as they were reaching out, I wasn't even reaching out to them anymore. So we arranged, the boots had finally come in, and it was last minute for everybody. I went online, I said, your boots are here. On Saturday, could you all please come to our shop, and I'll have your boots for you. In the meantime, I had connections with AgSafe, and they had come out. I had connections with United Way. They had come out. My 4-H club, who I wasn't the leader anymore, we had stepped down. There's a new leader. All of their stuff was lost in the flood. They live in that community of Arnold, or the leader does, and all the trophies, just everything 4-H was gone. But we have a good core of older seniors. They came, and they were helping to hand out items that people didn't know yet. So when people showed up, what they didn't know, we had the boots there, and they were walking in, and there was so much more. We laid out all the new jackets, the new rain gear, the new socks. And it was the first time that everybody was able to get together, and it was quite nice.
Yeah, I see that as such a catalyst moment in your story, because up until that point, and it's a comment you said a couple minutes ago, but the people, when you showed up at their house, they were like, this is the first time that we felt like we're not in this alone and that we're not the only ones experiencing this. And especially when there's something hard going on, when there's challenges that affect our mental health, we isolate ourselves and we feel like we're the only ones going through it. And that makes it so much harder to reach out, to start conversations. And so you did such an incredible thing by having all those donations there, but above and beyond that, you created a space for people to come together for the first time after this, people that have gone through the same event. Well, that may have been different, and what their experiences are may have differed, but the same event, and to have a place to come together to talk about it and to connect to others and feel like they're not alone.
Right. And it reminded me, I felt like when the flood happened, COVID stopped. Nobody cared about COVID anymore. You know, the police officers were coming to your door, and everybody that you saw, they were just working together and helping, but we weren't thinking about masks anymore. And we were a little bit overpacked in the shop that day, and we weren't social distancing, but there were a lot of smiles, and maybe you can talk on that a little bit.
Yeah, not gonna lie, we thought it might be a super spreader event, and wouldn't that be great? But to the point with I just remembered one of the people talking about stuff together, and everywhere you went, it was, no, it's okay, give it to somebody who really needs it. That was a common thread. I was in charge of handing out coffee to every single person that came in the door, or a hot drink of some kind. And they were just overwhelmed by everything that was there, because like you said, they were just looking for...
AgEx came, and you guys brought coffee and drinks. They brought wrapped gifts for kids, because Christmas is coming up and they don't have these items yet. So you brought these as other things that they could take, and
we did.
It was wonderful.
But one of the funny things, and thank you for that, one of the things, I remember hearing two neighboring farmers talking, and the guy said, came to get some boots because I found one. And the lady said, the other farmer, she said, well, yeah, I put one out at the end of my driveway because I think that might have been yours. And he said, yeah. And then he goes, so if anybody sees a left foot, size 8, whatever, that would be mine. It was like, okay, good luck with that. Because in the fields, when we went back later doing cleanup, there were refrigerator doors, never seen so much plastic, and just the
berry crates,
the stuff that was in the fields, but having everybody come together, not just those that were impacted by the floods, but the entire community. I was partnered up with one group, and it was people from a church, and it was these older, much older gentlemen, and I said, well, what brought you here? And he said, I knew I had to do something to help. And we were just cleaning up garbage in the fields, and you know, like you said, United Way, the different banks and lots of places offered up lots of funds to have that happen. And we went out and did the road safety thing so that everybody got a vest if they wanted one, and the city donated pickers, and we did safety orientation. I still have a list. There was I think there was 180 people that turned up. There were full hockey teams, full 4-H clubs, the whole bit. It was insane, but I don't think we ever found that other boot though.
Event other than the shop thing, right? What she's talking about is shortly after. You know, that day was great. I don't even know how many people came that day to the shop. But it was nice because they had fresh things. They had, you know, everything they had was either destroyed, ruined, wet, dirty. And this way they had new jackets, just things that they felt a little bit human again. So then this is what got my mind going even more. And this gets me in trouble a lot of times because my mind just never stops. And so then I decided, working with Hallie, of course, the fields were a mess. And I said, why don't we arrange a farmer's field cleanup day? So we started planning. I put it out there, like Wendy said, that, you know, there were churches, hockey teams, businesses from Vancouver, there were schools, some girls from the college there, they were playing volleyball, but they were supposed to go back home wherever they were, out here somewhere, but they wanted to stay. So we had to sign up. I don't think we had the full list because names of who came to get the items that were there for them to go out into the field. They signed the list, but we had, I believe, 250 people, and I had found 30 properties to go clean up. So I reached out to farmers, do you need help? Yes, we do. No, we don't. We'll be okay. And then, like you said, that was the point where the people on the outside felt they could finally do something. And they came, like my neighbors took a picture, and this is it here, but they took a picture of the cars down my road, and it's got a ditch on either side, so there wasn't a lot of room, and the cars just went on. And Hallie and I set up these tables that are here. I called a few friends to say, hey, can you help? That's Emily on the end, on this side, and you, because Emily was doing the questionnaire with everybody, and you had the vest and everything with them, right?
I was doing the safety piece, so I was concerned about liability for farmers. Yes. So everybody had to sign off that they had received a safety orientation, and that if they got hurt while cleaning up a farmer's field, that the farmer would not be held liable or responsible in any way.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't worry about any of that at all. So Hallie and I, we start this, and we're being very responsible. We've got our list going, and maybe hold that picture there, if you can. We've got our list going, and so we have people line up, and we're checking their names off, having them go down, get their safety information, and I had lists made up that this is the address and the property where they would go. And it became a real community situation at that day, because you can see on the picture with the buggy here, there was 3 or 4 guys that had buggies or trailers that they would float around and go to places, and people could throw debris in. The plan was, if you were in a field, you take the debris to the road. The city worked really well with me on this. One guy was just so helpful. We agreed that we would stack tires up, and then if it was like just wooden debris that can go into the bins, those would be in a separate place, but we try to keep it clean. And then the city agreed, or they talked to the garbage company, and they would come out the next day on a Sunday and collect all the items that were left on the road. As we went around, we had in the middle picture, the rugby club came and for this place. And this was one of the first homes that we went into, and it was a sight to see. You know, we walked in her door, her kitchen is here, and it's just stuff everywhere. And on this side, there's a little cubby room here, I would say about to where Wendy is, halfway to that speaker. And there was a big deep freeze, and same in width-wise, but that deep freeze was completely upside down and full of stuff. I don't know how it would go upside down in the short space that it had. And then on the end, that's one of the fields that what you would end up with at the day. The city had given us bags. And then again, I called Abbey Bin Company, and they had placed 5 or 6 bins throughout the community so that people could put stuff in, and they hauled that away for free as well. And so it was just a great day. And again, people felt like they were helping. The farmers were so appreciative. I messed up on a few, and one person called and said, they're not here yet. It's almost the end of the day. And I thought, oh no, well, there's people that have been going since early morning. They said, we'll go. So they ran out there, and they still went out there, and it was a really good day. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to highlight too, like what you've been talking about, that's community, right? People coming together to support. Wendy, you touched on it too, and just incredible and powerful how, I think that's what makes me the most emotional, is that, you know, even when people's literal worlds have just fallen apart, they are still coming together to support each other, or to say, I don't need this, give it to someone that needs it more than me, right? Yes. Like that is just incredible.
And we heard that, you know, pretty much from everybody. You would hear exactly those words, and there were some people that I thought, no, there's nobody worse off than you, but they still wanted to give it to somebody else. I might go down a few of the other items that came along the way over the months. United Way, they have their love fund that they have, so you can apply for a $1,000 grant. So both of those, actually I'm not sure about the first one, but for the field cleanup day, they gave us $1,000 so that Arnold Church could supply a lunch, so everybody was able to come back and get a lunch. And then there was another day, which is myself with the pizza over here. We did another field cleanup day, and they brought more food and whatnot for us, and they continue to give us gift cards and everything that way. As time went on, we weren't the only ones now out there doing this. We're still collecting gift cards. We're getting donated items to come in. There were a couple of hubs, we would call it. So in Yarrow, which is outside of Sumas, there was Victoria out there, and she opened up her home, and people would bring donated items, and anybody could go there. There was hot coffee, lunches, and they could go there at any time and receive that. As well as one of my neighbors, Allison, they opened up their farm. Victoria's not a farmer, that was more of a little community area. They opened their farm, and again, people would bring items there. So as I would get donated items, I would take them to Allison. Anybody could come, they could take whatever they want. The meals that would come in were from everywhere, from churches to businesses. Everybody would just sponsor every day, and this went on for...
It's still happening.
Yeah, like I think Allison had to close maybe June because field work was starting to happen. It normally happens in April, but with everything it was happening in June. So they had to close, they needed their shop back. And so for 7 or 8 months, this went on. And so as time went on, there was another fundraiser that happened, and it was country music. There was Kenny Hess out our way. He was working with George Canyon, and they were going to put on a concert telethon. So way beyond Abbotsford and Sumas Prairie, as everybody knows, there was Princeton, there was Merritt, there was Hope, where all the mudslides were. You know, we're talking about a small section here, but this was so much grander. They decided that they would donate the money to those 4 communities. So they had the telethon throughout the day, and in the night there was a live concert. And so Hallie and I got a few tickets for a few of the people that we knew had been hit hard. Our vet, we actually gave him some because he said, come on, this is my job. I had to do this. But he was one of the ones that had to put down 190 head of cattle that night. And, you know, that story sideline a bit that we've talked about is a boy that's good friends with my boy. He worked on that farm, and as they got, the boy and his boss left the farm that night, they knew the animals were not going to get out, so they had to cull them right away. And they sat at a neighboring place, but he said, you know, I heard every single shot. That was 190 shots. And he said, I'll never forget that. And I said, no, you won't. You know, for a 16-year-old boy, it's pretty tragic. And so to hear, you know, for the vet who had to be there, and then the 2 other fellows that was there, again, our vet said, you know, well, I had to do it. It's my job. And I said, but you can't tell me that wasn't horrible for you as well. So we gave him tickets as well. It was a beautiful concert, really fun. So at the end of the day, they gave all the money from that to the Rotary Club of Merritt, and then they wanted to trickle down to the Rotary Clubs of the other communities. And because we had worked with the Rotary Club already, they had also given us $10,000 to take out into the community. They gave us, Hallie and I, the money that was raised from that, and that was $16,000. And so we decided to give 32 families $500 each. And again, with that, we went place to place to place and handed it all out. And we started doing the gift cards the same. Like, my timeline's kind of all over the place right now, but with the gift cards. And as time went on, you know, we're quite pleased. We're like, wow, we've had $20,000 in gift cards and donations. And then it went up to $40,000, and then it went up to $60,000. And in the end, Hallie and I had handed out about $106,000 in cash and gift cards that we just drove around handing out to people, as well as about $55,000 or so in donated items. And, you know, it just kept coming in, and people wanted to help. We tried to see more ways that we could help. There was one family, they took possession of their home 2 days before the flood, and the bigger breach that happened flowed right through their home, so they weren't even in it, but was a mess for them, and they were a Vietnamese family, and they needed a lot of help. And so we helped them along the way. We gave them one of the $1,000 donations, and at one point I said, you know, what do you guys need? He says, we'd like to have a bed. So we had a bed made for them. Another family, they were Russian, and they needed just carpet in this one room. So we went and we got carpet for that one room. And it was just, Hallie and I were just pieces of the puzzle, but when all the pieces were put together, it was so helpful. And we couldn't have done anything that we did if it wasn't for all of the outside coming in, if it wasn't for AgSafe, if it wasn't for United Way. The carpet guy that I knew, I said, hey, can you give any discounts? Yep, anybody who comes in, we'll give them a discount. You know, all those people, because people want to help, were completing that puzzle and letting people know that help was there. And when they were finally feeling like, I don't know if I can come up above water, at that point they were seeing that, yeah, we can, and people are there and people care. So, yeah.
It's truly incredible what you did, Jimmy, and what those working with you did, and just how everyone came together. I'm going to go back to the question I started with unintentionally, Wendy. With AgSafe BC and other provincial AgSafe organizations, you guys have so much information. I think we can all see how, especially AgSafe BC in this instance, really evolved what you were doing specific to what was going on in response. But I'd love for you to talk about how everyone can prepare prior to something going on, what AgSafe organizations have, what you have to help with that, and maybe the importance of practicing like we do with fire drills.
Practice, practice, practice. That's not to go flood your field and see how it goes, but it did really highlight for us the importance of emergency planning in so many different ways. And what might be your emergency and what might be somebody else's emergency is very different depending on where you are, where you're located, what type of farm you might have. And so the templates that we're working with specifically go to have we're working on a toolkit right now that we can take away, but my team will go to a farm and specifically talk about what are the risks, what are the hazards that are specific to you. Do you live near a rail line? Is there a possibility that it could derail? Do you live near an airport? Could a meteor, and I ask this question because it happened, fall from the sky, come through the roof, and land in the bed beside you? That really happened. A little far-fetched perhaps, but still going, like thinking way outside the box as to what kind of different things that there could be. And then there's some things that you have control over and there's some things that you can't. So fire is largely preventable, particularly in a building. Forest fires we deal with all the time in BC, in the ranches, particularly in the Okanagan region. So we've done a lot of work with ranches on how to set up, to ensure that your home will be safe, right? Like not stacking all your wood right next to the barn and things like that. Electrical fires, doing inspections and things of that nature. But it's largely around doing independent one-on-one assessments with what would be specific to you and your facility as opposed to trying to generalize. There's a lot of things that of course can be generalized, but the part about practicing is, okay, well, what if? And it can be a tabletop exercise, but I live in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia. We are about 150 years overdue for a megathrust earthquake. Well, schools have to practice earthquake drills, and if you ever want to know how to practice a fire drill, just ask a kid, how do I get out of here? I've stayed in countless hotels where somebody pulls the bell at night and nobody goes out because it's not real. But the different things, like what if there is an emergency? Do you have things in place to transport your animals or your pets, or do you have a 3-day emergency supply? If you're driving, where's Gary driving through the mountains right now? You don't know what the highways are going to do when you get up in the mountains. Do you have an emergency kit in the back, right, with extra blankets and things like that you might need? How many of you have an extra battery pack for your phone in case, right, you have no way to access something? So, planning ahead, and people go, yeah. And people, honestly, in BC right now on the coast, the only time that they ever plan for earthquakes and prepare and get all their stuff together is after there's been a little shake somewhere. So there was just a big one in Indonesia, so there's probably some good work being done now. But having not only a family plan, but if you have workers and getting together and knowing where would we go. We had a real issue, not my organization personally, but there are a lot of temporary foreign workers that were evacuated. And it was a real struggle. Where did they go? And how are they getting the support, particularly when they landed at the Red Cross Reception Center and nobody spoke Spanish? So there's a lot of things that you have to factor in. Who do you have that could help and have it be there? So.
Yeah, and one of the things you said when we had a couple of meetings before this panel to prepare, and one of the things that Wendy mentioned was, like, there's even something that you print that you put on your fence post at the laneway, and I was like, I had never thought about that, but it made so much sense because someone could drive by and immediately know, you know, how many people were there, what animals were there, all of those really important items that you don't think of until hindsight.
And you can make your own. We just take 2-inch pipe, and we've got some end caps, and then you do your emergency response plan, and we've got these fancy stickers that are retroreflective or whatever you call it. And yeah, if you have to evacuate, you leave that on the fence so that emergency responders have the map of where your water supply is, where your electrical shutoffs are, where your chemicals are stored, phone numbers, who's your vet if it's a livestock operation, all those different things. They've been in place in the interior, particularly for forest fires, for quite some time, but it's just PVC pipe. So, and it's a downloadable template. So,
but so genius.
We've
had a question come through for those joining us virtually. How has this event changed the health and wellness of producers in the community? Are many suffering from severe stress, post-traumatic stress disorder? I'm going to jump on this one first. So I just kind of want to set the stage a little bit here as well, because we finally have some statistics on mental health in Canadian agriculture thanks to the University of Guelph and the work that they've done. Agriculture has been struggling. They redid a study, a study they did in 2021, and they found that 1 in 4 Canadian producers felt that their life was not worth living, wished that they were dead, or had thought about taking their own life in the past 12 months. So that's 2021. So that's leading into what happened in BC, the flooding that was on the heels of the forest fires, on the heels of the heat dome. Following the flooding, then we went in the spring into avian influenza. We're back in there now. So producers are struggling. And one of the main things here as well is that we have so much stigma surrounding mental health in Canadian agriculture. And that stigma is not just external, so keeping people from reaching out because I'm worried that someone might know that I'm seeking professional help. There's a lot of internal stigma as well. And that's the stigma that keeps us personally from being able to acknowledge and accept that we have something going on that we need help with. And so all of that is basically a catalyst for people in agriculture, producers that have gone through a traumatic event like the flooding, could have been drought in other areas, different things that go on. And it doesn't have to be as severe. I think I want to highlight that as well. It doesn't have to be as severe as the floods. You could have a hailstorm that wipes out a large chunk of your crop in 10 minutes. That could be a traumatic event that can create PTSD in a producer. And so, yes, there are a lot of challenges there. And before I hand it off for comment, I also want to highlight that there are things that we can all do to check in on ourselves and to check in on those around us, and there are things that we can look for. So has someone possibly changed in appearance? So maybe that person was really put together in the past. They took pride in always having their hair done or ironing their shirts. Suddenly they're looking more disheveled. Is there somebody in your community or possibly yourself that has really pulled away recently? Maybe they're not going to Coffee Row. Maybe they haven't been to church. This can be seen on social media as well. So has this been someone that is regularly posting, interacting, commenting? Have they really pulled back? That can be a really big sign that something's going on with them. Or again, if within yourself, if you're noticing these things in yourself. And there could be changes too, of course, in that and different risk-taking behavior as well as different addictive outlets. So that could be alcohol, that could be gambling, it could be our phones. That is something that is also addictive these days. So when you see those things going on either in yourself or someone else, that's a really good time to say, hey, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. And create that space for them to have a conversation. And it can be challenging, it can be hard. We didn't grow up talking about mental health. We weren't taught how to have these conversations. But I can guarantee you that if you create space for them, that conversation can mean so much to them, and sometimes that conversation is enough. Maybe from there it needs to progress to having talking to a professional, and that's something that you can assist with, and you don't have to have all the answers. And I know that can be a barrier too. This summer on Twitter was an incredible message to us all, but it was someone that supports farmers. I believe they were an agronomist, and they went on farm and noticed that there was something going on with a producer. And they said, hey, I've noticed these things. Are you okay? And the farmer said, no, I'm not. And they said, can we call a crisis line together? And so they sat down, they called a crisis line together. This support person, helped initiate that conversation, and then they left so that farmer could have that conversation. They very much could have saved that farmer's life that day. They didn't have all the answers. They weren't the professional, but they were able to say, hey, are you okay? Can I help you? Can I help connect you to someone that can help you? So just some tips to leave here with today. But yeah, Jimmy, Wendy, if you want to comment on the question as well.
Yeah, well, I wanted to add on to yours. Hallie and I, of course, we're two farm wives. We don't have the knowledge, we don't have the expertise, but we did see differences in people. We did see, places we would go and grown men would break down in tears. There were people that, it was amazing to us how many people wanted to take us into their homes. There were people, shortly after everybody was getting back, and some had not gone back yet, looting had started. And we went to one place and you could see where they kicked in his door. And they took things that were now being used to help these people. They took dehumidifiers, they took fans, they took, items that we needed that, that was enough to break these people. And so, we would tell them, each of your story is your very own. Don't minimalize. You maybe didn't get hit very hard, but you're taking it very hard. You maybe got hit so hard, but you're putting on that brave face that I'm okay. Every story, whether big or small, was as equal as the other. And mental health is always something that people don't want to talk about. Farmers don't want to talk about it. My guy's not going to talk about it. But I think even when you reach the situation, like what we went through, they learned that I'm not okay. And it's okay to bring that up. And find your safe person. So, when we started this, it was about just bringing cheer. It wasn't, I didn't think it would be grand. I didn't think it would be big. Anything that Hallie and I did was nothing close to what anybody else did. The amount wasn't what other people did, but we started out wanting to just bring joy in a dark time. And instead, we just became listeners, and we would go to a home and they'd say, come in and see. Do you want to come in and see? And yes, and we would just let them talk. And that's what the majority of it was. It was just listening. So if you're on the listening end, listen, watch for things. If you are that person that wants to talk, don't be afraid to talk. And if you feel safe with me, someone that you have gotten to know just over the little while, or you have somebody that you really feel safe with that you've known a long while, just find out who you feel good with and reach out to them. Another thing that we had done was we reached out to Mayor Braun because people were getting quite frustrated with the help coming in as far as financially, and they were struggling to pay. And one person I hadn't even thought about, I thought they've got a good job, they're doing okay, they've got a builder for a husband, they were on the path early on, and she called and says, if you have a gift card, I could really use some groceries. And it was an eye-opener for me. I thought, of all people, I thought you'd be fine, but if they're asking for groceries, they're not fine. So we had gone over there and she said, well, we were the first ones to start repairing, but we put everything on cards and we did all that thinking we'll pay it shortly, and when the funds come in, and some of these funds didn't come in, and so that added stress. You know, everybody got an initial $2,000 from the Red Cross, but then it was, as we've talked, applications. The applications very difficult to get through. There was funding through Red Cross. There was funding through DFA, Disaster Financial Assistance. There was funding through some groups. Justin Trudeau said that he would match 20 million donated to the Red Cross. He would match that. But it became more difficult than that, because the money that was donated to the Red Cross, not all that money came to Sumas Prairie. That just got put into the bucket, and we saw some of it. So that was a high struggle for a lot of people. Now we're into the finances, and we're digging. There were people that are retiring, and they went into the retirement fund and used all their retirement funds. There were people trying to get loans, and they were denied for loans because they're in a situation that they can't guarantee that they're going to come out of this situation. We're in a flood zone, so the majority of us did not have insurance, flood insurance, and so there was random people that did. And the reason they had that was because there was an old, when they signed up years and years ago, they were able to get it, and most people didn't even know that they had it. And so there was a farm here, did not have it. A farm next door, they had it, and the farm here didn't. But because they were years ago, the kids have taken over, they still had that same, what do you call it?
Grandfathered in.
Yeah, it was grandfathered in. And so all of these things are causing these upsets. And the key is to try to stay together. And if you can avoid not speaking up, because sometimes you can get so low into that hole and you don't know how to dig yourself out at that point. And people are there. People want to help. There's businesses there. I myself, I hadn't worked with AgSafe. I knew of AgSafe. I had not worked with United Way. I had not worked with Samaritan's Purse was another group that helped us. So I have all of these groups at my fingertips now. And a few weeks ago, we had my brother-in-law's foreign worker was driving home with his family, and they were in a car accident, and the foreign worker had passed away in the accident, and his wife and son, 13-year-old son, were hurt, but they were okay. So now they're going through the emotions of losing their father. They're new to the country. What are they going to do? So I was able to reach out to AgSafe and said, you know, can you guys put me in touch with a counselor, because the family is thinking that the boy might need someone to talk to. It's just great to know that I have these connections that I never knew that I had before, and they're there.
And
so
just to clarify, AgSafe does not provide counseling.
Yes.
We are not counselors, but through the Ministry of Agriculture, we received funding to provide support to anybody involved in agriculture throughout the province who has been through the forest fires, the heat dome, any of the flooding, any of those things, all while navigating a pandemic as well. So we've been able to provide that source of support. And we have a series of counselors who are agriculturally aware, so they are either part of an agriculture family or they work on a farm, so they know they're not going to say, well, maybe you should just go for a walk outside. Not that that would necessarily be an option, but
Go take a holiday.
Go take a
take
walk.
the dog
Yeah.
outside.
So, and we're finding more and more uptake right now as the term atmospheric river gets used anytime there's going to be big rain. We're putting it out there. We've done a lot of lunch and learns and different seminars and provided support to, I'm sure you heard about the 4-H group that lost all their cattle on the way to a show in BC. So it's, I'm very grateful for the funding that was received and working hard to make sure that that continues, because as more, you offer it, no, I'm good, and then one day somebody says, yeah, I'd like that, please,
And
to make that
happened
call.
many times
So
that
yeah, it's
they
happening
would
a lot right now.
See that and say, oh, you guys do have this.
And
so
there are a
that
lot
was
of
good.
groups in other provinces, not just BC, that have set up farmer-specific mental wellness organizations, support, counseling, things like that. Megs can probably speak to that better than I can. But
yeah, just so the question, if there are folks that are struggling, what resources are available? With mental health being health that is provincial, so to Wendy's point, every province is different with what is there for support. Quebec has an incredible farmer support program. They would, I think, be at the top for what they have. PEI has another really strong program that involves agriculture-specific mental health clinicians as well as a crisis line. Ontario's just launched the Farmer Wellness Initiative, which is an agriculture-specific crisis line, and counselors as well. I am with the Doomer Agriculture Foundation, so we're the national voice and champion for mental health across Canadian agriculture, really trying to bring everything to one place because it can be really hard to find what is out there. So if you go to our website, which is doomore.ag, we have a resource page that lists everything that is, by province or national support. It can also use your location to bring up specific supports that are close to you. They could be social workers, they could be therapists, and we know that they have either a background in agriculture or they've done some training to be able to connect. And then when you guys all got your bags today, in there is a QR code support sticker, and that can go anywhere in the cab of equipment, on toolboxes, on notebooks. But when you scan that, it actually will connect you to the crisis line that is specific to your province or territory. Because again, some provinces have farm crisis lines, some have rural crisis lines, some just have a general line, or you can go through to a resource page.
Yeah.
Awesome. Was there anything? Oh, are you up now? 3 minutes. Okay. So before we let you guys all go, I just wanted to ask Jimmy if again, what you guys did was incredible, and thank you so much for sharing your story with everyone today. What would you like us as individuals to take away today back to our farms, our communities, and our families?
Just your resources. If you have them, give them. If you have the help to give, take the time to do it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People are there, they want to help, and you don't have to go through any of these situations alone. It's amazing how many people reach out. I didn't know them in Quebec, I didn't know them in Coquitlam. So on both sides of the country, people are reaching out. They're there, so react to that. And all of what I talked about today, I know it sounds like me. That is not it at all. We could have never done what we did if it wasn't for other people. And we don't do it for recognition or anything. It just was the thing to do, and we just felt right doing that. And without everybody else, we could not have even done anything that we did. So it's not about us, and it's more about, we're just happy to be able to connect everybody together.
Well, thank you both so much. One, you're never alone. Two, put your own oxygen mask off first. But three, please keep having conversations. If you're thinking something or needing to share or needing to talk, there's a really good chance someone in your circle is going to benefit from that as well. So please keep talking. Please keep supporting each other. Thanks.
I think that was just incredible, and thank you so much. Sorry, my cold's coming back. But thank you so much to the three of you. I know we planned this together, and it's a tough topic, and it's an emotional topic, I think, for everyone, but especially for the three of you for being so brave to speak about it, and Jimmy and Wendy, you were there living it, and some other BC folks who are in the room as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And can we just put our hands together one more time for Megs and Jimmy and Wendy? And of course, we really want to thank our sponsors for this session as well, the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food, the Doomer Agriculture Foundation, and AgSafe BC as well. So that's it for our learning program today.